This is David Stark from WatchOurPass.com, your website for movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Kijak, the writer and director of Shoplifters of the World. We're going to talk to Stephen in just a second, but first, let's check out the trailer. And while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. It helps me out a lot. Thank you.
The Smiths broke up.
What?
You know, the Smiths may be dead, but all the albums are still here.
I wish there was a way to get all the posers in this town to take notice.
I did have an idea. Something that would go down in musical history.
Impress me.
This night, we'll open our eyes.
To the charming man holding the radio station hostage. Thank you from all of us, right, guys?
David.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey,
Steve.
How's it going?
Steve or Steven?
Steven.
Perfect. Hey, Steve, thanks so much for joining me.
Sure, my pleasure.
Awesome. So this is Stephen Kijak, the writer and director of Shoplifters of the World, which is coming to theaters and digital on March 26, 2021. It's a really great, just kind of wonderful film. Kind of touches all those 80s vibes, but then, also has this great kind of underlying message of, rebellion and acceptance, which is, two nice themes to have. I guess my first question is, I guess, why did you make a movie about such terrible music? Metal rules, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the little teenage metalhead in me at some point became a totally obsessed new waver. So yeah, I really flew the flag for the Smiths in those days. There isn't a band that I think inspires more passionate fandom and kind of obsessive craziness that would inspire someone to attempt to hold up a radio station. I mean, it is based on an urban myth. The inciting incident almost happened in Denver in the 80s. So.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I kind of the tagline, or I guess the opening line was so ambiguous. I wasn't sure, where the kind of, story and myths kind of intertwine. So that's really interesting to hear.
Based on true intentions. Yeah, there's a kid, James Kiss. If you can find him, give me a call. I'm trying to find this guy for years. Wanted to hold up a radio station. Came with a rifle and a bag of tapes. Sat in his car in the parking lot of the radio station in Denver, and he chickened out. And he called the security guard over to call the police on him. Instead of just going home, he got himself taken into custody. So it made the paper, little tiny story. And as the years progressed, it blew up into this story of there was this big fiery standoff at the radio station. And the Smiths were playing all night. Didn't really happen.
Well, I kind of like the way that you envisioned it. I think it's
yes,
yeah, it's probably the best scenario that could have come from that situation. So you are the writer and the director. It was inspired by, it seems like, myths, and then also just kind of Smith lore and Smith music videos. So I guess was that radio story the kind of impetus for this, or was there some other underlying kind of story or message that you wanted to get through and you just kind of started writing? I don't even understand, I don't know how you start making a film that is so tied to a source material but not tied to any source material. It's a kind of an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get back into narrative after doing the music documentaries for years, and I've always been a writer and writing scripts in the background in a way. And it was more like I had a story of me and my friends growing up, new wave in the 80s. I wanted to make this sweet little kind of, few days in the life of kind of tale, but I didn't quite have a shape. And then my pal, Lorianne Hall, who's got the story by credit on the film, she grew up in Denver and had remembered this story. So she actually started talking to me, telling me about it one night over cocktails, and I just thought, this is fantastic. I can just move my friends to Denver, and we've got a story. It's great. It's like one night. It's got the myth. It's got the personal characters. Typical rambly teenage movie. To me, it was like a new wave American Graffiti. It was a great canvas to play on. So.
Yeah, I loved the story. I loved the cast. I kept thinking of Empire Records, not kind of, set in the same area, but just kind of that same feel of these, kids that are kind of trying to grow up and kind of figure out their kind of path in life. And yeah, I love this film. It was kind of a surprise. I figured I'd like it, but I just really kind of fell in love with the characters and the music.
Thank you.
I think I talked to James, and I call this, I think, a Smith's indoctrination device, because it really does kind of sneak up on you.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I made mixtapes for my friends. Like, to me, I've said it before, like, my whole career is like mixtapes. The movies are mixtapes. Like, I want to put a ton of music in them and just create stories with the songs in a way that really turns people on. I try to approach each one, there's the fan, and then there's the new initiate, right? You want non-fans to enter the world, and they don't have to be fans, but hopefully they'll come out either just having enjoyed the story or wanting to dig deeper and like get into the music. So.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the music, I think, the press notes seem to imply that there are so many Easter eggs and references. I guess one of the questions I had is, it seems like a lot of maybe the story sequences were kind of inspired by Smith's videos, or maybe, Smith's album art. Is that kind of, did you write the story and then kind of insert those sequences in, or was it, you're kind of thinking of all this Smith's lore as you were kind of filling out the story?
It was sort of a layering effect. I mean, Lorianne wrote a very quick, basic little treatment that was just kind of like a night out, so it was just like we hit all, like, the cafe, the party, the club, with certain, little Smith's lines kind of hinted at. But yeah, as we built it up, I did a lot more research, and it went beyond just quoting lyrics, and we wanted to pull in so much stuff, like the lyrics themselves are stolen from literature and movies and films. So then I went back to those sources, and I started stealing lines and images and ideas. And then, you even have the iconography of, like, the famous Smiths video of all the Morrissey wannabes riding bikes around Manchester. So we wanted to have our own bicycle gang, and we sent them out into the movie. And it's sort of like I've always said, it's like a weird little metafiction, it's just quotes within quotes within quotes. So it's this totally referential world. It's sort of realism, but it isn't at the same time. It's like, we're in this weird little limbo between like a narrative and an actual movie musical, a music video. It's all these kind of different forms sort of mashed together, with the spirit of that music just kind of driving it,
Yeah, definitely. I imagine your writing room and or storyboard room must have just looked like a beautiful mine, just with, these, strings connecting different pieces and printouts and things like that. I can't even imagine what that looked like.
It was more about just like giving all the departments really thick referential like documents, like for the style and for the environments and just everything that went on the walls, all the props, all the costumes, all the hairstyle, everything had a lot of research behind it. And half the time the referential stuff was kind of a secret. I didn't really need to explain to everybody that they were speaking in quotes. I wanted to see, it's a little postmodern trick of just like letting it happen as natural, as if it's just naturalism, right? It's like they're just speaking dialogue, but really it's got all these different layers to it. So you can unpick that later, and the fans will have a field day digging around and finding all that stuff.
I think I'll just wait for the DVD
the
release, the Blu-ray release that has all the little pop-ups where I need to see.
That would be great. I'd love to do that.
So I talked to James, and he mentioned that you sent him like a care package, essentially, of music and references. I imagine you did that to the rest of the cast as well, because they all seem to be fully versed in this world. Were they different for each cast member based on their character, or was there kind of some underlying, I guess, base knowledge that you sent to everyone? Like, how
Well,
tailored were those?
it was really simple. I mean, they all had, you know, the Smiths stuff. They all had the soundtrack. And then I picked, I think it was like 3 albums each. They each got like your top 3 favorite records.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Patrick's were like, oh God, let me think. He got maybe like Prefab Sprout. I know Cleo got the Cocteau Twins. Sheila got Everything But the Girl. Billy had like the first U2 record. Little Kate Bush was in there. Susie and the Banshees was definitely like an album they would have had. Sheila definitely had the first Suzanne Vega record. You know what I mean? It was stuff like that, like stuff that was basically in my collection at that time that I remember, like, you know, my friend who was more of like a Sheila would listen to this, but like, oh, like Patrick definitely had Low Life by New Order. You know what I mean? It was like, or The Cure's Head on the Door. That was a big one for him. So like they had like a full spectrum of like, or, you know, a certain palette of sounds of time. Very 85, 84. That was kind of like the sweet spot, you know.
Very awesome. That's you know, so much thought and care to do that is just such a, it's, you know, kind of speaks through in the film as well. Everyone kind of fits naturally and is clearly kind of loves the music and also feels very comfortable in this area. One person I was wondering about is Joe Manganiello. Manganiello. I loved his character. I thought he was fantastic. And I loved his metal character. And 2 questions. One, did you send him a separate indoctrination package of, you know, hairband metal? And 2, he was so comfortable as this radio DJ. Was that written or was that improv? A little bit of both. He just kind of felt so natural in that role.
Well, first, he didn't need anything. He was already there. That was like, he was one of the first people to get involved. And he was the character. I mean, he grew up metal, like he was a metalhead, a high school metalhead jock who had a sports injury. So he ended up in drama club with a bunch of kids who listened to the Smiths and alternative music. So he had all of it in him already. So he was already deeply immersed. So we had to do like no work whatsoever. He really just took it and it was all on the page. It was more about him crafting the persona and like the hair and the Lemmy mustache. He was like a little Motorhead mustache, the Kiss patches. You know, he created that battle vest himself. It was really tactile. He was so hands-on with the craft of that character. And he's a great actor, you know, like he just got into the zone. Like to me, it was like Wolfman Jack from American Graffiti, but he was also like vibing on Eric Bogosian and like Swimming to Cambodia. And like, he really just pulled it together through a lot of his own work. It was awesome. It's like one of the best things in the whole movie.
Yeah, no, I loved it. And I loved the scenes, you know, with him and his, you know, guest hostage, I guess, you know, not hostage, the opposite of hostage, you know. I loved their interaction and, you know, kind of the underlying messages that were portrayed through that interaction and, you know, just that the overall night experience. I thought that was just, you know, it was such a nice theme to have in this film and something that I think a lot of people kind of, it's a good lesson to have in our current time, as it feels like people are more polarized on their views.
Totally. I mean, it starts with violence, but it ends with total acceptance. I mean, they're essentially the same person. You know what I mean? They're really like the same kind of music obsessive geek loner freak who are like have their own kind of world that they've wrapped themselves up in and style and all of that stuff. But they're the same guy, you know, to me, that's how I see it. I mean, I've been on either sides of those arguments, you know, about either older music or new music or whatever it is. And they played it beautifully. Yeah. Like they got together and they really built that whole thing. We had a very short amount of time to shoot those scenes. We lost a whole day to snow.
Oh, wow.
So we had to like take one day and reshoot some stuff outside. So Joe and Ellar were like compressed and we had to just like fly through it, but they were awesome. Totally pitch perfect.
That is amazing that they could have that much development in such a short amount of time. So I guess a few quick questions. I know you've got a full slate. What music was playing on set during the during the filming?
Nothing, you know. I mean, we'd play the Smiths for background to get everybody into the groove. We had a woman who came to set to coach all these kids in 80s moves. So like they got the moves right. So they weren't dancing anachronistically, you know what I mean? Like everything had to be perfect. But yeah, there'd be a little playback, and then, you know, I don't know. I mean, whatever they'd play when they'd go home. I mean,
which I think at this point was probably the Smiths after you had your, you know,
better
brainwashing
have
sessions
been.
with them. Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a couple really quick questions. I call it the lightning round. They're just kind of short, lightweight questions about the film and the characters. Have you ever quit meat? If
Yes.
you can feel free to pass if you want to answer any of these.
No. Yes, actually. I mean, hugely influential. Meat is murder. But yeah, there were a lot of vegans on set. I mean, you know, we were a very accommodating culinary crew.
Excellent. I mean, that makes perfect sense given the subjects of this film. Have you ever worn eyeliner?
Have I ever? Yeah, I actually used to wear eyeliner. There was about 3 years where I thought I was Robert Smith from The Cure before I went a little more like cardigans and quiffs. But I did it really badly. It was like smudged. It was kind of like a sad goth. It's really not pretty.
That's what James said too. James said he wore eyeliner, but it was smudged
I love
too.
it. I love it. And he's like, what is he, like 24? I mean, he's like a young guy.
Well, it goes in waves, right?
First wave right here, early goth. Yep.
Or maybe you inspired him. If you could take over, you know, radio station, I guess nowadays Spotify station, and you know, force them to play one band, what would it be?
It would be the great Scott Walker. He's the subject of my first music doc, the greatest musical artist of our time. Passed away 2 years ago. Today, actually.
Oh, wow.
Rest in peace, Scott Walker. Yeah, more so than any of the 80s bands, he's like light years ahead of everybody. 60s crooner to like avant-garde. No, his last album was a collaboration with that Swedish drone metal band Sun.
Oh, nice.
So, I mean, just the godlike genius, Scott Walker. Look him up.
Well, yeah, that's an awesome spectrum too. That's good for a full night of play because you can kind of run the gamut.
Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, it's amazing. An amazing career.
What was your first record or tape?
Kiss Love Gun vinyl. Cost me $6 at the Woolworths at the mall.
Oh my gosh.
I was 8 years old.
That's a lot of money then too. Like that's a good purchase.
I think it was $6. Yeah.
That sounds about right. And what was the posters that were on your wall when you were in high school?
Oh God, in high school. They're like in the movie. It's like it was The Cure, it was Susie and the Banshees, it was the Smiths. I had a little Sinead O'Connor picture. I loved Echo and the Bunnymen. It was total like just card carrying, you know, Brit 80s nerd. Yeah, I had this awesome like Cure poster from the head on the door. They all had like the neon faces. I had the Anton Corbijn Susan the Banshees hyena poster. I wish I still had that. And a big like London poster because like, you know, I wanted to go there one day, and it ended up being like my second home, and I've made a ton of films there. And yeah.
Perfect. Sounds
prophetic.
Like an awesome room. Well, thanks so much for your time. The film comes out on March 26, 2021. It's in theaters and digital, so you can check it out in theaters if you're comfortable and they're open, or you can rent it or buy it and watch it in the comfort of your own home. Just make sure you have a really good sound system because the music is infectious. Even if you haven't heard of the Smiths before, you will love them by the end. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for making this film. I really loved it.
Thank you, David.
It was a great surprise to start this year.
Great talking to you.
All right, thank you so much. That was Stephen Kijak, the writer and director of Shoplifters of the World. Shoplifters of the World is coming to theaters and digital on March 26, 2021. So if theaters are open and you're comfortable, you can go check it out there, or you can watch it in the comfort of your own home. Just make sure you have a really good sound system, because the soundtrack is pretty phenomenal. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot to make sure all my new interviews go straight to you. And as always, please go to watcherpass.com for all your movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Thank you.